guess that may bring us over to our last topic here, which is something that's also near and dear to you. A lot of people are familiar with like GitHub Gist, and so you can add like short snippets inside of that. Well, Jonathan's been working on something that he'd like to show you that might can make that a little bit easier. And again, staying right inside of Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, I mean, so I have another extension installed that is called GistPad, which really at its core is an experience for allowing you to easily manage your GitHub gists from within VS Code. So as soon as I bring up that tab, you'll notice that I can immediately see all of my gists, any gists I've starred, as well as the gists of other people that I'm quote unquote following. And I'll talk about that in a second. But because this is all integrated within VS Code, I can easily create and use gists for a bunch of different purposes. So for example, if I want to be able to easily create code snippets, I can at any time select a block of code, right-click it, and say Add Selection to Gist. And I'll call this, React rendering.js. And then I can add it to an existing gist, or I can create a new one. So I'll say create a new one. We'll call it React rendering. And so as soon as I do that, you'll notice that the tree just updated. There's a new code snippet gist called React rendering. And if I expand that, there's the 2 lines of code that I just created. And so now that is there and always available for me. So if I go off to a different file, imagine I'm working in a different project, and I want to reuse that snippet, I can right-click in the file and say paste gist file contents. There's the React rendering gist. When I select that, it's going to paste that snippet in. And so that's kind of a simple example of how GistPad enables this really simple experience for managing code snippets directly within the editor. And because we've been talking about remote development and enabling development from multiple machines, because these snippets are stored in a GitHub gist, any machine that I install the GistPad extension on and then sign into my GitHub account, I'll have access to those same snippets. And so they're kind of automatically roamed for me by default. I don't have to do anything else, right? Now, in addition to gists, what I've noticed is that a lot of people also use, or they also like to kind of keep ephemeral notes throughout the day. And so in order to make that easier, GistPad also supports this concept of scratch notes. And so notice I can click here to create a new note. And behind the scenes, what that's doing is creating a new gist on my behalf and giving me a markdown file that is named after the current date and time. So I can say, today I did a live stream with Michael. It seemed to be pretty cool, right? And I can do that, and once again, I can capture any kind of notes or to-dos or reminders for myself, and these things are all versioned for me behind the scenes, all stored in gists. Now, kind of going a little bit further than that, right, is instead of just having the ability to capture documentation or scratch notes or code snippets, GistPad also has this notion of enabling you to create interactive playgrounds that allow you to kind of visually work code samples. So let me right-click the Gist node and say New Playground, and it's going to give me a bunch of templates that I can use. So I'm going to select basic HTML Gist JavaScript, and we'll call it live stream. And what's going to happen is behind the scenes, it's creating a GitHub gist with 3 files in it, an HTML file, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's going to lay out that environment to be optimized for me to develop this playground really effectively. And so, for example, let me go into index.html and just say hi there. And you'll notice as soon as I'm typing, it's actually rendering the preview of this playground in real time. And so let me jump over to style.css and say, body, we'll say the background color is red. And as soon as I type that, it took effect. And so let's say, oh, red, that's pretty harsh. Let's pick a lighter one And because I'm able to explore this playground within VS Code, I'm able to take advantage of all of the language capabilities,
Nice.
such as auto completion, etc. So then let me say, in the JavaScript alert hi. And so as soon as that types, here we see the alert up here. In addition to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can also use other languages that are kind of supersets of those. So let me rename this file to be, instead of a CSS, let me do an SCSS, which is the extension used by the Sass language, which is kind of a superset of CSS. One of the things that Sass lets you do that's really nice is you can nest selectors. So underneath body, I'm going to say div color equals white. And as soon as I type that, once again, notice that it took effect immediately. But what's cool is that I'm not doing anything to compile this Sass code into CSS. The playground environment is doing it automatically for me. And so I can do the same thing with JavaScript. I can actually be writing in TypeScript instead of HTML. I could be writing in Markdown or Pug. And furthermore, I could change the layout. Oh, I was already in split bottom. So if I don't like my editors on the bottom, I want them on the left, I can do split left. And that'll give me this nice vertically stacked experience with the preview on the right.
Yeah.
Or if I want the full screen or I want a grid view, I can do that. And so this is a pretty simple example, but if we go back to, GistPad, you'll notice that we also have this showcase tree, which is kind of meant to like highlight what can be done, what cool things are people in the community doing with GistPad and kind of playgrounds. And so like, let me open up the foam pit Starfield. This is one that I think is kind of neat.
Oh, that is cool.
And I'll make this, full screen preview. It's just like the name implies, it is a foam pit Starfield, and I can sit here and rerun this. But if I go back to my GistPad, you'll see I have a bunch of my own playgrounds that we have. So like here's rock, paper, scissors, for example. And actually, let me put this back into split bottom. And so here is a rock, paper, scissors game that works as you would expect. But one thing to highlight that's kind of interesting about this is that I'm now kind of bringing together two different demos into one, where this playground itself also includes a code tour. And so imagine that I'm taking this sample because I want to learn front-end web development. Not only am I able to visually see how the sample works by playing the game, but the game itself or the sample itself also guides me into relevant points. And so here it's saying, hey, this is the HTML that defines the hands. And so as I type, I can actually explore and see how this works by means of the guidance. And so if I go to the next step, now it's telling me this is where the background color is defined. Go ahead and change it. And so I can do that. And it has that kind of very visually satisfying response, almost like you're having a conversation with the code by means of both prose, but also the visual response to your interaction with it. So yeah, that's kind of GistPad. And so in a way, it's kind of exploring how do we enable developers to create a knowledge base of their own. And that knowledge base is composed of code snippets, but those code snippets could either be discrete chunks of kind of static code, but it could also be runnable playgrounds and samples. It can also be notes, documentation. And so because all of it behind the scenes is stored as a GitHub gist, you keep all of your data. It's written to a place that's interoperable with a ton of other tools. The other last thing that I was going to just mention is GistPad also lets you follow other GitHub users. And so before the show, I went ahead and followed you, Michael. And what's neat about that is I can see all of your public gists. So none of the private ones, right? You keep them secret. Yep. So here I can see you have a playground called Timeline. I can open this up. I can see what you're working on. I can interact with this, but I can also modify the code completely. And in fact, you wrote it with Sass, so you're taking advantage of that. And I could fork this. So if I try to edit it, it's going to tell me you don't own this gist. Do you want to fork it? And so I can fork it.
Okay, awesome.
And so it's going to say, okay, it's going to open that now. So I'm going to say, don't save it. now it's going to reopen a copy of that is now mine. And so I can edit this and save. And so this kind of highlights some of the collaboration capabilities of GistPad, where it's like, hey, you build your own developer knowledge base or library, but then you can choose which of those kind of artifacts, whether it's documentation, snippets, or playgrounds that you want to make public. Other people can then follow you, and they can kind of learn and fork your ideas for their own purposes as well. So yeah, that's kind of the gist. The gist of
the gist. So that is really cool. And what JC was able to figure out there is that is actually one of my gist that I am currently playing on to kind of show folks that join my stream in the future where exactly I'm at in the stream. Because it seems like a lot of the times I'm trying to kind of give updates as people kind of join in, and different types of like hosts and different types of like raids. So I was kind of try to use that to show people where exactly that I'm at.
The other thing I guess I could quickly mention is that GistPad supports full interoperability with CodePen. So if people are already familiar, actually let me open up a different browser. CodePen is kind of this awesome ecosystem where front-end developers create and collaborate on samples. Okay, here we go. Here was some random one that's like some tool cube. Let me export this one. Okay. And so then we'll come back and refresh. And then I'm going to group my gist again. And so, yeah, here we go. So here's job ample. And so when I open this, you'll notice that it's going to be the exact same sample we just saw in GistPad or in CodePen. But now I can actually interact and explore this inside of VS Code versus inside of the browser. So then the other thing is that if you want to take a gist or a playground that you're creating and import it into CodePen, you can do that as well. So let's say I modified this and I want to then reshare it with the CodePen community. I can right-click, say export to CodePen, and that's going to then create a brand new pen on CodePen with the code that I was just exploring. And so in this case, we didn't make any changes, so we kind of just round-tripped the code to be a code back. But that illustrates how GistPad is, because it's built on top of GitHub gists, and gists are already kind of this universal developer storage that a bunch of other services use, like CodePen. It allows that kind of cool interoperability between them, as opposed to, if kind of this experience was built on top of its own kind of proprietary data store, so to speak.
Awesome. So I'm going to switch back.